It's done.
It's done? Okay. All right. Thanks for muting everybody. Is Anya muted too? No? Okay. Just make sure everybody is all muted out. Okay. Hi. Thank you so much for spending the next hour or so with me. My name is Rafeal, and I wear many hats. I'm a birth doula, postpartum doula, really a full spectrum doula these days. Placenta encapsulate, priestess, spiritualist, spiritual advisor, life coach, body worker, energy worker, speaker, sex educator, childbirth educator. I do lots of things. And I got started on this spiritual path in a conscious way in about 2005 when I found Orisha worship and got initiated as a priestess of Oya, the goddess of change and thunder, in 2011, and then got my master's in women's spirituality at the same time. So I've been doing this for quite a while in many different ways. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome sauce. Anya, you're frozen. I'm not sure if you're aware, but as long as you can hear me. So a little bit about the training that I've received, because I like to tell people that so that if you want to seek some more of this on your own from me or from someone else, this is the path that I took. And so, like I said, I got initiated. I'm no longer in either of the spiritual houses that I started in. And I also got really blessed that quite a few of my elders taught me a lot. So, you know, the old saying goes, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen more. Oftentimes, oh, I got muted. I'm good? Okay. And that's oftentimes how you get the information that you need to move forward, is to just listen. And sometimes I would just sit and listen. Just make sure you're muted. Even if it didn't seem like they were talking about nothing, because that's when I would get some of the best information about spiritual matters, about wisdom, just around life and things like that. So don't be afraid to just sit and listen to your elders and even to children, because you'd be surprised what will come out their mouth. So with that as our foundation, I first just want to say a prayer before I move us into all of this work. So however you pray, you can bow your head, you can close your eyes in meditation or softly lid them, but I just want us to be standing on a spiritual platform before we talk about spiritual work. Giving thanks to all of my ancestors and my spirits of light, all of those who have showed up today. Big love to Tracy's spirits for creating this platform. I want to ask for your support and guidance in ensuring that we are all able to hear and to speak from a place of truth and grounding, that you bless this meeting, that you bless each and every person who can hear my voice, and even those who intended to be here and could not for some reason. I ask for always continued good health, prosperity. May we always wake up in our right minds. Ashe. So I'm gearing this towards birth workers, but this could be utilized really in any kind of spiritual work that you do. So birth work is spiritual work. And anyone that tells you differently, I'm sorry, they're lying. Being in the room where someone is birthing, and even being in the room with a pregnant person, I feel like is being in the presence of God. However you call that, whatever you name that, Jehovah, God, Jesus, Olodumare, Pachamama, whoever you call it, you are in that presence when you are in the room with a pregnant person and when you're in the room while they're having a child. They're bringing forth life. And because it's such an intense place to be, right? Like you're in this plane and you're on the other plane at the same time. It's really important to know how to maintain yourself, and not just on a physical level and on a mental level and an emotional level. Those are important too, but also on a spiritual level. And so many of us in this work will make sure, if we're aware enough, we will make sure that we're eating well, that we're getting body work. Some of us will even go as far as to make sure we're in therapy and have sister friends to talk to. But we will forget about the spiritual maintenance that goes into this work. So I want to emphasize that you are doing God's work, spirit work, even when you're just on the phone with your clients. Because your ancestors, those spirits of light that are working with you, are also speaking through you and giving you the information that you need. And so it's important to look at it that way and not just feel like you need to maintain yourself after you've been to a birth. Every contact that you make with a client is a spiritual moment and a place where you want to be able to fortify yourself before, during, and after. Because there is nothing like what happens when you spiritually are drained. And it's a sensation that I'll go over a little bit. The other thing is many of you, I'm not sure, because I haven't met you, but I assume some of you have a spiritual foundation. But I highly encourage you to, if you don't already have one, to build one. And if you have one, to strengthen what you've got. So if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're an Orisha worshiper, if you're a Jain, whatever it is that you do, let that be the foundation from which you build from. And for someone like me, I draw from a lot of different traditions, but my foundation is Orisha worship, and that's what I use as my frame. That's where I go to pray. That's where I go to get my information about how my spiritual world is working. So when I'm getting messages, that's the lens that I'm using to understand those messages. Even though I'm still willing to go to a Southern Baptist church and get a foot tap any day, and I'm more than happy to go to the mosque and put my head to the mat. But that's where my foundation is. And you want to have that so that you have something to go back to, a center, a grounding. Because oftentimes, I have oftentimes seen people not have a spiritual grounding, and they're just all over the place, and they don't know what to grab onto when things get intense, or even in times of celebration. But particularly when things get intense, if you're just like, maybe it's the Buddha, or maybe it's a Legua, or maybe it's this, you want to know that there is something you can always go back to no matter what it is. So find that one thing that is for you. Let that be your center from which you grow your spiritual practice from. Even if it's ancestors, and you know that you have some ancestors who were bomb and who were grounded, and that you could call on at any time. Let it be that. If it's nature and you're like, it's trees, let that be your center. But when you're having those moments in your own life, but particularly when you're working with clients where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, you want to have your main line going and not just be reaching into the ethers. It's also important to know and understand other faiths. There's a book called World Religions. Of course, I'm forgetting the name of the author. Tracy, if you pop by it, let me know. I think his name was Howard. But it's a really good book that breaks down some of the world religions, the main ones like Christianity, Native American religions, Hinduism, and it breaks it down without all of the politics. It's just like, this is what Buddhism was from the beginning. This is what Christianity was from the beginning. And I say that because when you're working with clients, it's not only good to have your own spiritual center, but you want to be able to understand their spiritual center and what lens they're using to get through these moments, particularly when they're in that birth room and it starts to get really intense and it gets really hard and it gets really painful. You want to be able to understand where they're drawing from. So I've worked with a Muslim family or Muslim families before, and the one I'm thinking of in this moment, it was so good for me to know that she converted to Islam later, because she went back and forth between calling on God and Jesus and calling on Allah and Abraham. And I understood what all of that meant. That doesn't mean I know everything about those two traditions, but I understood enough that I could snuggle up against her and say, yes, Allah is with you and you've got this, and Abraham is walking beside you, and you want to be able to do that same thing. Oh, thank you, Tracy. The World's Religions by Hudson Smith. You want to be able to say things like that and have some sense of what that means, and that you're not just saying words. If someone's Hindu and they're praying to Lakshmi and that's who they draw from, know who that is and know what that means. So you also have a sense of what other energies are in the room that you're having to contend with. Because it's going to be you, your spiritual guides, your ancestors, that pregnant person, their spiritual guides, their ancestors, their God, and whoever else is in the room. That includes nurses, midwives, dogs, cats, everyone and everything. So you want to keep that in mind. So with that, and feel free to write down your questions, because I know I'm moving through things pretty quickly. If any of you end up wanting to know more, I'm definitely going to be setting something up to kind of dive deeper. But right now we're just kind of doing breath. I'm going to slide over and give you the basics of what you need in order to have a spiritually clean self so that you're sustained. So spiritual hygiene, what that means to me is it's the same as physical hygiene. Just like I make sure that I bathe on a regular basis, I make sure that my spirit is cleansed on a regular basis. And a lot of the people that I know who do this work or who are spiritualists in some way, shape, or form are all about, once a month they do something. No. I've got something that I do on a daily basis. I've got something on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on an annual basis. There's always something going on, because I don't just bathe once a month, right? I don't just wash and do my hair once a year and then expect it to be all good. If I waited that long, imagine, right? All the stuff that you have to get off of you when you've sat and waited to get all that clean. But if you do it on a regular basis, then you're not cleaning off as much. And that doesn't mean sometimes you don't need a nice, long, hot soak of a bath. And that's the more intense stuff, but you got to do something on a regular basis. So it's important to protect, center, and cleanse yourself, because this work can turn you into an energetic zombie. So what that means, and you've probably come across an energetic vampire, an energetic zombie at some point. If you have not, you probably will, or you may be one. Oftentimes those are the people that you get around and you feel low. Something in you just feels drained. Or you get up next to them and you can feel some part of you leaning towards them. Like, I just want to help them. I just want to heal them. That kind of sensation. They'll also look like folks who they may be pale to the appearance. A lot of people who are very negative in their thinking and in their talking. Folks who are constantly, like they're pulling from everything. Every time you see them, they're going to another retreat. They're getting another body work session. They're doing another cleanse. They're starting another spiritual tradition because they're just filling up a empty hole. You don't want to turn into that. Same thing with birth workers. I have met birth workers who basically they're attending births to feed their soul. And that's not what this work is for. We're here for them. And the blessing is we do get light, but we are not there to suck the life out of that new baby and that birthing parent. So one of the basic things you want to have to keep yourself spiritually centered is an altar. How many of you have an altar? Just raise your hand. Sort of. I got another kind of. Some of y'all are blacked out, so I would assume that only a few of you have altars. If you don't have one, or you sort of have one, when we get off this call, before your head hits the pillow, get her done. And it doesn't have to be magnificent. So here's why you want to have an altar. To me, an altar is a prayer that is happening for me and the work that I do, even when I'm not doing it. So whether or not I am actually praying, that altar is sending up a prayer for me at all times. Whatever that altar is dedicated to, that's what it's doing all the time. I've got currently 3 altars. At one point in my life, I had 9. And you can go too far, so try to keep it consolidated. But if you feel like you want to altar in every room of your house, go for it. But that altar is a place for you to go and center yourself. It's a place to bring your troubles, your problems, and it's also a place for you to bring your celebrations, your wishes, your needs, and things like that. So you want to have that. And it's okay to have an altar that is for multiple things when you're starting out. So don't feel like, ooh, okay, I'm going to have to make an ancestor altar, and then I got to make a birth altar, and I got to make an abundance altar. Just form one from a place that feels good to you. And what you need is a flat surface. Some people like putting theirs on the floor. Some people want it up some. I'm the kind of person that likes to put their altars off the ground unless I'm doing specific work with the earth. And use what you have or go and get something. I have some of my first altars were on crates, milk crates. It doesn't have to be overly extravagant or fancy. Just something that you feel good about. I once had an altar that was just an old desk, and I cleaned the desk real good and put a piece of fabric on it and started putting stuff on it, and that was my altar. One of my altars is on top of a dresser. So just keep that in mind, all right? And then the next thing you want is you want to make sure that it is physically clean and spiritually clean, okay? Because it's everything that we own and have and are part of in this world collects energy, including your clothes, right? You wouldn't just put on a dead person's clothes. Why is that, right? So it's the same thing with furniture. It's been absorbing things. So you want to physically give it a good scrub down. And then I like to do smudging with, oh gosh, all of a sudden I'm forgetting the name of it. Lord Jesus. Sage. Basic with some sage. And I also encourage you to use your heart. So if something in your mind goes, you know what, I just feel like I want to use some Nag Champa to cleanse this, go for it, because you want to start learning how to trust your gut and how to trust your heart. But if all else fails, sage is a good basic smudge to use. Then I like to use a piece of fabric. So some of the most minimal altars and the easiest way to start is with a white piece of fabric, not cream, not off-white, white, like this. And it can be a scarf, it can be a tablecloth. You can take a old pillowcase and cut it up the side, or you can go to Joann's and have at it and get yourself a nice piece of fabric. It's up to you, but you want a piece of fabric up there. Now, if you want to be more colorful, just understand that when you have lots of patterns and lots of colors, that has its own energetic vibration. So you want to be able to deal with that different kind of vibration. So if you're the type of person that can handle a lot of energy in your house and in one space, by all means, do the colors, do the patterns. But if right now you're needing to be a little more calm, I would suggest just going with white and starting with that. And you want it to cover the entirety of whatever surface that you're using. From there, I like to use water. So I get a bowl, or you can use a cup, a glass, but understand that that's all that that glass, bowl, container is gonna be used for. And you want it to be clear and you want it to be breakable. So no plastic. And put some water in there and make sure that it's cool. And the reason for that is the best way it was explained to me is an elder said to me, the water is like the phone to the spirit world. This is gonna be the way that you keep a conversation going back and forth, because water does everything, y'all. Water does everything. And it's a really great way to keep communication clear and clean. And you want to use something that's breakable because that's also going to be a much better conduit than something that is plastic. So you want, again, you want to make sure that that message is going back as clearly as possible. And I would suggest using one that's clear to start. And again, if you want to do colors and patterns, just keep in mind that that's going to change the vibration of things. And so you want to be in a place in your own spiritual development that you know how to handle that and what the different vibrations are going to mean. So once the message comes through, if it comes in a way that you don't really understand, step back and get yourself a clean, clear glass, and you'll be good. After that, it's up to you. The only exception is I try not to have the dead and the living on the same altar, because I don't want the living to start to feel like they want to get dragged towards the dead, or like the dead dragging the living towards. But again, that's up to you. Some people find that it's okay for them. As a child of Oya, who's also queen of the dead, I'll mix the two. But you can put pictures of family members who bring you strength. You can put crystals that you know will uplift you. Rose quartz is always good. I love selenite. Jade is great because that's also a good stone for prosperity. And also I like to put things that are symbols for spiritual grounding for me. So I have a serpent on one of my altars that was gifted to me by an elder. And for me, the serpent really represents the aligning of chakras and Kundalini energy. And so that works for me because it's a reminder to, always keep it straight. And that the serpent is got a whole lot of medicine for us, especially around sexuality, because the way the baby got in there is how we gonna try to get that baby out, right? So hopefully we have some sensuality in this work. Past that, you can put plants on there, incense, anything that resonates with you that's gonna have a vibration of positivity, protection, grounding, centering, and a place that you know that you can come to and it can hold positive and negative, okay? Altar, please. If you don't do nothing else, get yourself an altar. So you want to maintain that altar. Some people build their altar, they walk away from it, and they don't do nothing to it again. I change my water every Sunday or Monday at the latest. Every week, that water is changed. The plants that are around my altar, I make sure that they're watered and that they're refreshed. There's nothing that's just sitting and dying. If there's money on my altar, I make sure to move it around so nothing is stagnant. And for me, I do an annual on my, the day that I became a priestess, my Ocha birthday, I clean my altar. So I wash the fabric, I wash down the surface. I know some people who do that every week or every month, but you want to maintain that altar and keep it fresh, because you're asking it to digest a lot of energy. And again, if we only bathe once a week, it's rough. You can do it, it's a choice, but you have to then then you have to deal with the consequences of that. It's the same with your altar. And also maintaining your altar is going to it and interacting with it. It doesn't mean you got to do it all the time, but you want to incorporate a regular time that you are with that altar so that, again, you are in conversation with spirit in that space, or whoever you've dedicated that space for. So you want to be in conversation with your ancestors if that's who's there. You want to be in conversation with God if that's who's there. Yeah, you just want to make sure that you're going back and forth with it and not just having it over in this corner collecting dust and not doing anything. And so moving on, once you have that altar and that foundation, it's really important that the space where you call home is free of clutter and clean. That cleanliness is next to godliness is real. I like to say cleanliness is next to spiritness. And when there's a lot of clutter, when there's a lot of dirt, when there's a lot of chaos, that affects you. And especially when you're doing this work, because our homes as birth workers, that's our sanctuary. This is my church, is my house. And so you want to maintain that. You would never expect to go into a church and, there's a whole bunch of stuff in a corner and the dishes need to be washed all the time. No, you maintain your home like it's your church. And it's understandable.
Right back.
Oh, hi, Tiffany.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Just mute yourself. You just want to make sure that you're doing the best that you can. So I know, particularly women of color, especially when it comes to cleaning, we will break our necks. I'm not telling you to break your neck, but you also don't want to walk in your house and be like, oh God. You don't want to feel like that all the time. So try to keep your house in a place that is at the very minimum decluttered, and that there's not a bunch of stuff that's just hanging out in corners. And as much as you can, keep it clean. And if you're one of those folks that have access to it, get a house cleaner, please. If you have access and you can do it, go on. If you got kids old enough and they listen, that's one of the ways that they can be a birth assistant for you, is to keep your house clean. Smudge your home at least once a week, at least. Everything that you are doing out here in this world, you are bringing home with you, even if you are keeping yourself upright, okay? I do it. I'm burning incense and saging my house on a regular basis. And that's a way to really purify the air. Sage is also good, like if there's a bunch of people who are sick in the house and you can't get the windows open, sage is a great way to disinfect the air. Same thing with lavender and tea tree oil, though they're both antiseptics. But just as much as you're trying to keep the surfaces decluttered and clean, you want to do the same thing with the air. So you want to make sure that you're smudging on a regular basis. I highly suggest it being once a week, and also smudging yourself. Keep in mind that your space set is your mindset. So when you walk into your home, what it looks like and what it feels like is where your mind is at. So my beautiful, wonderful wife, and shout out to the chick with the pop eyes. I see you, girl. Um, my wife, I love her to death, but her room has got stuff everywhere all the time. And that's pretty much how her mind works, but that's how it works. She can, once you organize her room, she doesn't know what's going on. It's the same thing with her mind. I can't function like that. I lose it. Things have to have a place to go. And particularly my house, like I'm like, go on and have your room be like that, but the rest of my house has got to have some order to it because that's where my mind is. So you want to keep that as your focal point and as your center when you're getting your home together. The same thing applies when you're in the hospital at a birth, or you're at a birth center, or you're at a home birth. And if you're going to be transporting, because you're starting at home and you're going to a birth center or a hospital, how their house is, that's their mindset, okay? You can get you're basically getting a snapshot of how that family is doing by looking at their house. How does it smell? How does it feel? Is it cluttered? Is it not cluttered? Okay. And when I'm in the birthing room, I do my best to keep it organized and somewhat tidy. Because when stuff ends up everywhere, inevitably that birthing parent says to me, I feel icky. I just feel gross. It's just stuff is just everywhere. So I try to keep things consolidated, or at some point in the birth, I'll go around and put things in order and like waft some lavender or some orange in the room just to freshen it up. And that resets for that birthing parent and for anyone else who's in the room. It's also really great. Lavender is a really great smell for staff because, you know, sometimes I love our nurses, but, you know, they got a lot going on and you want them walking into that room and say, it feels so good in here. I just love coming in here. So that's the thing that you want to keep in mind. And it's also going to help you because chaos loves chaos. So if a space is full of chaos, you best believe chaotic spirits are hanging out and doing too much, okay? Before, during, and after your time with your clients and at a birth, you want to be doing something. Before I go to a birth, and before I meet with my clients, I always say a prayer, always, without fail. Even if it's just a quick, like, just guide my thoughts, good spirits, something, okay? And I also do cleansing baths. So one that I really love that's really easy to do, and you can do it whether you have a tub or not. I'll fill a large basin. So I'm going to describe it for folks who don't have a bath, just in case. I'll fill a big bucket or a pot with powdered milk. My favorite is powdered goat's milk, and it's just a preference because it just feels more cleansing to me. But you can use any kind of powdered milk, and that way it also just doesn't go bad. But you can also use fresh milk if you want to go that route. I also like to put in a smell that's good to me. Something that's fresh that makes me feel good. Okay, so that can, some of the basic ones you can use: lavender, sage, anything citrus, peppermint, but just use a little bit and build from there because essential oils are pretty strong. And then what I'll do is I'll say a prayer over that bath, asking for clarity, for cleansing, for grounding, for protection. And then I'll use the shower water to fill it up so then you know it's not cold, because I've made the mistake of pre-making the bath and then got in the shower and poured it on me, and it's cold. If you like that, or if you live somewhere it's hot, by all means. But I use the shower water, and if I'm not doing my hair that day, I'll just put my hand a little in my hand and shake it and just put it on the top of my head so that some gets on that crown chakra. And then the rest I'll pour down the front and down the back. If you have a bathtub, all that I just described, the powdered milk or fresh milk, the smell good, you can just put into the bathtub and soak for no less than 20 minutes. If you can only get something really quick, that's cool, but you want to, I suggest that you go for 20 minutes at least. And it's okay if you want to put other things in the bath with you that you think will be helpful. So I've also done baths with chamomile. I've put lavender flowers in there. I've put eucalyptus leaves in with me. I keep all of these things on stock at all times. Rosebuds, all those kinds of things can go in there as well to be a part of your cleansing bath. And don't be afraid to ask a sister friend to make a bath for you. If you have a spiritual friend who you know you want some of that goodness and you don't want to make the bath for yourself, feel free to do it. Have them make it in a jar and you just pour it right into the bath, fill it up with the temperature that you like, get in it and do your thing. While you're in that bath, you want to be thinking about what you're letting go, but also what you're bringing in. And that can be fear, that can be the nervousness about that birth, like, or I just want to make sure that I make it to this birth safely. Oh, hi, Bubba. Whatever it is. And when you release the tub, don't watch it go down, because all that stuff that you've let go, you don't need to watch it. Just let it go. And anything that you need to clean out, make sure all the water is gone. And then you can clean out any of the leftover, I was about to say away. Not everyone knows what away is, but plants and flowers and things like that. And just throw them in the trash and you're done, okay? So if you're doing this and this is gonna be a part of your bathing routine, I will do my regular shower and then do the spiritual bath. And when I come out, I just try to pat myself dry. If you have the space, time, and energy, you can let yourself air dry as well. Right before I go to a birth, not only do I pray, but I also keep some scents. This is the one that I like to use. It's Gardenia 1800. You can get it at any spiritual store, but you can also, use an essential oil and some water. But I like to just put something on me, and that's a part of how I build my protection. If you have talismans and amulets that you like to wear that you can just kind of tuck away, I am known for putting shells and crystals in my bra and putting necklaces tucked in my shirt so no one sees it. And then when you're actually at the birth, I have not attended a single birth in my over 10-year career without my head being covered. Keep that head covered, because there's a lot of energy going back and forth. People's ancestors are up in there. You're on the threshold. This right here, woke up this morning with my mind, that's for real. And the mind carries the body. Without our minds, we can't do anything. And that amount of energy running back and forth will have you out of your mind and have you off balance. So you want to keep your head covered so that also your hair and that crown chakra is not absorbing. Particularly Black women's hair, especially if you have locks, is just absorbing energy, my friend. So you want to make sure that that's covered. And when you go to wash your hair, that you are keeping in mind that you are washing out not just dirt and oil and products, but also energy. Because I know all of us know that feeling that once it's washed, you're like, whoo, you just feel like a weight has lifted off of you. And that's part of the reason why, okay? But keeping your head covered will help with that. And I personally like to wear white most of the time, but I have gone to births with a color on top of my head. Again, you want to make sure that you can handle those energies if you're going to be messing with colors, especially if it's patterned and things like that. And keep those scarves clean, spiritually and physically. Also smudging. So getting that sage, that lavender, and smudging yourself. And if the birthing family is okay with it and you're not in the hospital, also Palo Santo, sage the room while you're at the birth. If they're down for it, you can ask them. If there's people who are allergic to sage, so if the family is allergic to sage and it gives them headaches, Palo Santo is the next alternative. If smoke is what gives them the headache, then just take a washcloth, get it wet, put some essential oil, just a little bit, and waft it around the room, and that's a wet way to smudge a room, okay? And the same thing for afterwards. So if you're the type of person that can't really do smoke, or you have children around and anything like that, you can use that to waft and smudge your own home. The other thing is to protect your navel. That's one that people often forget. So your navel, just like it was a portal that connected you to your mom and to your placenta, it never stops doing that. Your navel is one of your chakra centers, but it's also a portal. So what I usually do is I'll take a little bit of cotton and I'll pop it in. If you're an outie, you can maybe put some cotton and put a Band-Aid over it, but I keep that bad boy covered. It's the same thing there. So if you've ever been at a birth and for reasons that you can't explain, you started to feel sick to your stomach, that's what that was. That was energy passing through your navel. And when you keep that covered, that's less likely to happen. Same thing with the back of the neck. That's also a major portal. So sometimes during a birth, I'll just do this real quick. No one has to know what you're doing. If I start to feel like heavy or too much is going on or I don't feel clear, I'll just do a quick, get that off. Okay, or put a little essential oil back there or a little bit of water. Same thing with the crown chakra. Same thing with your hands, okay, because we do so much with our hands. I highly suggest that if you haven't done it already, get an elder to bless these hands of yours, because that way you'll have that protection and you'll have that extra layer of tools to draw from, okay? And then also make sure that you are in sister circles as much as possible, someone that you can talk to and let that birth go. So once you're done with that birth, you've done all your cleansing, you've popped out your navel, you've taken the head scarf off, all that. You want to make sure that that birth gets processed. Even if it was amazing, it was the best birth that you've ever been to, it still has to be digested. Okay, so either you want to be writing that birth down and or talking to another sister who understands what you're talking about so that you can process that birth through your body and you're not taking it with you to the next one. And I suggest that you do it within 7 days. Okay. Also, getting body work on a regular basis. I go to the chiropractor within 2 weeks after I come from a birth. If that's not something that you have a resource to, try to find a sister girl or someone who, there's a lot of acupuncturists who are doing sliding scale all the way down to $15, but getting something that's also moving that physical energy through you, and also making sure that you do physical exercise. I walk, because that's one of the ways that you're going to keep digesting those energies that you're taking on is through movement. So dancing, walking, swimming, getting on the elliptical, whatever it is, but you don't just want to always be stagnant. Okay, so just like water can be wonderful, but if it does not move, it could kill you. It's the same thing with energy. You don't want it to stop moving and just be stagnant. It can come to a pause, and that's okay. It can be still, but then it needs to keep moving, okay? Just like water, same thing. It can be still for a minute, but you don't want it to just not move at all. Let me make sure I got everything. Okay, I know we covered a lot. And I did it pretty fast, but I am available to take questions. I wanted to make sure I leave the last 15 minutes for questions. So feel free to type it into the chat and I'll read it out loud and answer it for you.
Can you see me? Can you hear and see me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. When you guys ask her a question, can you just like, or maybe if she's speaking directly to you, can we see your face for those of you guys who are blacked out? Okay.
Cool. So whoever has a question, go ahead and type that into the group chat.
I don't have a question. When I tell you guys that she just went surface with you, baby, Rafeal can be deep as hell. She was real gentle with y'all. She will get deep, 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 deep. So if you want to meet with her one-on-one, she does cleansings. She does, Rafeal, you can talk about all this. I mean, you did mention them, but she does readings. You know, she does ancestral readings. She does like personal readings. You know, she can give you ingredients for bath. She can take this to a whole different level. Like she and I, when we get together, the more she opens up, the more I just want to be like in her spirit. So she went very, very surface with you guys. And if you want more detailed information on a one-on-one basis, I highly encourage you use this, her as a resource. Okay.
So I do see one question, and I will thank you, Tracy. But I'll also say a little bit more about what I do and the services I provide. But one of them is, how do you smudge yourself? Just put the smoke or the sage around you. So you can either have a smudge. Oh, one second. This is mugwort, but this is basically what smudges look like, right? It'll be the dried sage wrapped. And you can just light this, and then you would go across your body, under your arms. Make sure you get your hands all down and up in your back. Get your yoni area underneath your feet, your legs, back of the neck. Or what I like to do is I also will have like a goblet like this. You can kind of see in there. And I'll put sage pieces inside, light that up, and then I'll use that to go across and throughout the house. So you can do either one. Going back to the covering of your head, I may have missed it, but did you mention the color of the coverings we should wear or should not wear? I did. My suggestion is white. White, just to kind of explain it a little bit more, is a reflective color. Black is an absorbing color. So white is the absence of color. Black is all of the colors together, which is why there's that vibrational difference. It's not because one is good or bad. It's just understanding what you're dealing with when you wear that color. So when you wear black, you're dealing with the vibration of every color that exists in the universe. When you're wearing white, you are dealing with no colors of the universe. And in between, we've got the spectrum, right? And it's the same thing with is it a lighter blue? So is it leaning more towards being white, or is it a darker blue and leaning more towards being black? That's going to be about how much energy you're absorbing. So for folks, if this is new for you, please go white. If you have more experience of knowing how to deal with energies and vibrations, and you have experience, colors of the rainbow, go for it. You just have to keep in mind what that's going to do for you. And I would suggest learning the emotional and physical and psychological properties of colors, because each one has its own situation going and what it's trying to do for you. Anyone else? Any questions about baths? Or y'all got this bath situation? If you can't type it because you're on your phone, feel free to just ask the question too. Christian? You got a question over there, girl?
Yeah, I just sent it over.
Oh, baths. Oh, see? Look at God. Could we get a list of ingredients? So I will give you two baths that are pretty basic that you can use and they're easy to put together. White bath. That was the one I was talking about with the powdered goat's milk. That's the one that I prefer. And it's not hard to find powdered goat's milk, like any like whole food kind of store, like natural store will have powdered milk and for sure powdered goat's milk. And again, you can use fresh milk. It just doesn't, I don't like the smell of fresh milk when I put it in my baths. So you want that as your foundation. You're also going to be using water. And if you can use holy water, feel free. Holy water is just water that's been prayed over. So keep that in mind. You don't have to get it from a church. You just want to make sure that it's positive prayers in that bad boy. And I also like to use cascarilla or efun. So cascarilla is powdered eggshells. Efun is a clay that is basically found in Nigeria. So you can find those two things at a botanica near you, or a spiritual shop would have something like that. I haven't made cascarilla from scratch before, like just pounded up some eggshells, but I'm sure you could if you want to do it. But remember that it goes down, you want it down to a powder if you use that. Mix all those things together and use freely. If you're going to use fresh milk, know that you've got about 24 hours to use it. If you're going to use powdered milk, you've got about 3 days before it starts to kind of go bad. And all spiritual baths, I feel like need to be used within 7 days of being made before you just need to dump it and make a new one. So that's a white bath. White baths are really good for clearing your mind, clearing your spirit. If you're just trying to reset back to one, it's a good overall bath. If you're like, I just need something, it's a great way to get that something. And you can feel free to add other things to it. That's just the basic, okay? That's just like if I was telling you how to make rice and peas, and I just said, like, make sure that you soak them beans and get that rice in there. After that, you can do whatever you want, but you at least need the rice and peas. It's the same thing with this white bath. You want that as the foundation. Now, the only thing with white baths is you don't want to start adding a whole bunch of colors and a whole bunch of smells, okay? Because a white bath is meant to be cleansing. So once you start adding a whole bunch of smells and a whole bunch of colors, you're turning that bath into something else, okay? So you want to keep it pretty plain. So at most, I may do like 1 or 2 drops of lavender in there, just for a little extra something, or I may sprinkle just a pinch of calendula or something like that, but keep it light. The other one is a sweet bath. And sweet baths, you want to start with, I like starting with orange water, but you can also just get some orange essential oil and put that into some water enough so that you can smell it and have that be your foundation. The orange blossom water is my favorite. You can also make your own orange blossom water when oranges are in season. You want to get those flowers off of there. I boil them. Then I let it sit overnight and sift the flowers out. And then now I've got my orange blossom water. It does not last long. Even in the fridge, you've got about a week. So you have to keep that in mind when you buy it or when you make it fresh like that. So you want a sweet citrus smell that is orange. If you use fresh oranges, you need to use it that day. Again, water, preferably holy water, so water that's been prayed over. And then some pretty, pretty, pretty flowers. So it can be chamomile, calla lilies, sunflowers, roses, any type of flower that is going to make you feel sweet. And then I also sometimes will add a little bit of honey. If I add sugar, I use real sugar and put that in the bath, and then you wash with that. And I see it. And sweet baths are about attracting goodness and sweetness and sensuality and love of self. And so, especially if you've left a birth where that family was just, it was real trudging through mud, that's a good one to bring that sweetness and uplift your spirits. What bath do I need to attract the right mate?
We can have that at a later conversation.
We can. And you know what? A sweet bath can do that as well.
I think we need to do one on just womanness and womanhood and sexuality and all of that goodness.
Yes.
Y'all can kind of see where my mind is at.
Yes. I like that, Tracy.
Come on.
You got something going on right there. I like that.
God. Yes, God. Yes.
Cool smell.
This old solo shit, trying to handle it myself. This is what I can't even do that. I just feel like, no.
Yes, there are baths for that. And in the meantime, jasmine and ylang ylang are both good scents to stimulate sensuality, sexuality, and attractiveness.
See, I said the right. See, I don't want to just attract anybody.
Yeah, that's a whole session. Girl.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a whole session. And I have a question about altars. Is it true that spirits can come through an altar? Yes, that is true. And so that's why you want to make sure that that altar is clean. And if you don't really know what you're doing, that you're using white, that you're being very careful about what you put on top of that altar, because that is what that altar is a prayer, but it's also an invitation for spirits to have a place to gather. So they're not just like running all around your house. I have spirits running all over my house, but that's for a whole other reason. But they know to gather at the altar. Okay. And so what you want to make sure is that you're attracting spirits of light and of positivity to that place, and not ones that are confused or who are dark or who are a hot mess. So that when you're in conversation with something that's good. And that altar is still going to be a place for you to be grounded and centered. So yeah. Okay, so with the last couple of minutes that I have, thank you so much for your questions. Y'all have been a great audience. I do tarot readings. I do ancestor readings, so it's an opportunity to talk with your ancestors. I do consultations for baths, so knowing what to put into a bath. I can also make you one if you're near or far. I do spiritual advising, so if you are trying to get spiritually grounded or have a spiritual practice for yourself, I can support you in creating that, whatever the path is for you. I do blessing ways, rituals, coming of age, transitional rituals with people, manifestation circles, all of those things. And you can go to my website and there's more information there. And I hope to do something again soon. I know Tracy's probably going to put another fire under my behind so that we can go a little bit deeper into some of this, because it's true, we just kind of slid over the surface of what it means to maintain yourself spiritually when you're doing birth work specifically. So thank you all. I love you. I pray that the information that you were given will get you started and get you a foundation or help you build on what you already have. Many blessings. Take care. You're welcome.